Bible stands, though the hills may tumble. The Bible stands, though the earth may shatter and crumble. I will plant my feet on its sure foundation, though all around is sinking sand. The Bible stands.
Turn your Bibles to 1 Corinthians chapter 3. 1 Corinthians chapter 3 as we continue our study, encouraging the church. A lot of times you look at the book of Corinthians, you don't necessarily think of it as a book of encouragement. You think, oh, that church has got lots of problems, and boy, Paul just came on to them really harsh. But as we've hopefully seen so far as we've gone through the first two chapters here, it really is an encouragement. It is designed to be able to help the church and encourage them in the right direction by pointing out where the problems are and the issues. Again, let's real quick recap. The churches saw themselves as being very spiritual, even to the point that their arguments with one another in the dissension was about who they followed, who was the better preacher, who was the one to follow, Paul or Apollos or Cephas, or those that even says, oh yeah, but we just follow Christ. And we've seen that they really didn't follow any of them, because had they followed them clearly, including following Christ, there wouldn't have been divisions. There wouldn't have been conflicts. There wouldn't have been those things. And so as we looked and we saw through those books and those chapters, and we began to start putting the pictures together as to what they were dealing with, the fact is they really weren't near as spiritual as they think they were, in spite of what they appear to be on the outside to themselves. Today we're going to get back into that discussion of being a Paul and Apollos and all those divisions, but really help them to, again, see really where they are spiritually. A lot of times in churches, what happens is we look at ourselves and we compare ourselves amongst ourselves, and we look, hey, we're pretty good, we're pretty spiritual. Or even to the point where you've got people in a local church that you've got different people that appear to be at different spiritual levels, and so you compare yourself, oh, these people are much more spiritual than these people, and we get a false sense of where we really are spiritual. So Paul jumps right in here in chapter 3 in verse 1. It says, I, brethren, could not speak unto you as spiritual, but unto carnal, even as unto babes in Christ. He said, let's just get honest here. He said, I can't even come and communicate to you as being one who is spiritual. You are carnal. That word carnal there is fleshly. The real meaning of it is everything that is about the body. You just get it broke down, not even just looking at the flesh. It's the thing that makes your being move and go. It's just the base things of our life. He says, I have to come to you as carnal. There's not anything spiritual about you. And even so much as babes in Christ, there's a part of you that is in Christ, but it is so infant-like. The word babes here, the Greek word here, is referring to that which is an infant, one who can't even verbally communicate with words, is unable to be able to carry on a conversation back and forth. It is hearing things. It is learning some things. As parents speak to infants, they begin to hear the same things over and over again, and be able to start visualizing as their eyes begin to focus a little better, and they're able to start putting things together. They begin to start associating things, words and objects and things, but that's the extent of it. There's not really a way in which a two-way communication can go on. There's not a way in which, if you will, the ideas of understanding are even there. You're just talking about somebody who is just barely at this point is starting to be able to pick up this word and this object. So here Paul is saying to this church, you are just at an infant stage where you're barely starting to be able to pick up when I say this word and I associate it with this part of your spiritual life. You're just starting to put it together. You haven't even been able to connect A and B yet. You're just trying to figure out what A and B is, let alone be able to connect them. So this is a huge contrast to where they thought they were. They really thought they were somewhere along the lines of being spiritual giants. Unfortunately, I've been exposed in churches and being able to come across people that same thing. They portray themselves as being so spiritual, but when you just start talking about the basic childlike faith doctrines of the Bible, they become astounded. They're like, wow, what's that? Again, we're dealing with babes here. So we're going to see how this really comes in. He says, verse 2, I fed you with milk and not with meat, for hitherto you were not able to bear it, neither are ye able. He said, when I came to you before, I was just giving you milk. What you have learned up to this point is just milk. I didn't give you meat back then, and you know what? I can't even give it to you now. You know, again, you deal with churches and deal with people in churches, they sit there and say, oh, we're going to delve deep into the meat of the word here. And you begin to hear the conversations that go on as they begin to discuss they see as meat. And you're sitting there going, whoa, wait a minute now. Man, that's still milk. That's still the stuff for infants. Now, understand, this is not a criticism. It really isn't. Because you don't sit there and criticize a baby, an infant, for not being able to eat steak. You don't just sit there and say, well, man, you've been here for 6 months and you still can't eat a steak? What's your problem? Don't you know? Hey, boy, I want to give you some meat here. Well, they're not ready for it. So don't give them something they're not ready for. It's not that it's a criticism. It's an identification as to where they're at for twofold. For themselves and really for those who are going to be trying to minister to them. It has to be done in such a way in which you understand who you're ministering to so that you can feed them properly. Unfortunately, I've been in some churches sometimes where there's pastors, evangelists, those that have come in and preached, and they've just laid out the meat. And the people in the audience, there's no response. Well, why is there no response? They can't chew it. They can't get it. They can't put it in. So you got to give them the milk. So it's not a criticism. It's an encouragement. Let's get with the milk. Let's start putting A and B together here so we can get to the meat. So he said, I can't give you the meat now because verse 3, for are ye yet carnal? You're still dealing with that infant flesh. You're still dealing with some things that you can't move on there. It says, for whereas there is among you envyings and strife and divisions, are you not carnal and walk as men? He said, you need to start identifying yourself. You need to start really realizing where you are. You are still at this infant stage. You are still at this carnal. You're allowing your flesh to make the decisions for you. You're just walking like a man. You know, to sit there and to use this phrase in our society today, man, he's a man. What does that imply? That implies that there's been some life living, there's been some experience there, and now they're starting to be able to make decisions and do things that are not childlike anymore. But in this phrase, in this connotation here, what is going on here is you're walking like a man. It's meaning this is not a compliment. This is, you're just doing what you can naturally do. There's nothing different. There's nothing significant. You're just doing the normal, everyday things that you can do. And so many times in churches, we get used to doing the every normal daily things. We've been told, here's a list of do's and don'ts, and if you do them and you don't do them, and everything's going to be fine. But yet we're doing it in the flesh. We're doing it in as just as man. Oh, okay, I can do that. Oh, I can stop doing that. I can do all these things. And again, he's just pointing out there's a problem here. You're carnal. Why? Because it lists a few things here. It says envying, strife, and divisions. Going back to what he said right at the beginning of the book in chapter 1, dealing with the problem there's divisions among them. So it starts off and it says, whereas there is among you envyings. The word envying there is from a Greek word that means zealous, which we get our English word zealot, or being zealous for something. That's a positive word. Boy, you're excited. You've got some energy about them. Well, the fact is the envying here, that word is the Greek word for zealous. It is, boy, you are really into this thing. Into what thing? Well, the proper word of this is dealing with heat. The root word for this, zealous, Azeo, which means to be hot and boiled, like you would with water. You are going to put heat to something else to cause it to change itself. So when we're talking about envyings, what is going to happen here is picture a person who is envious of somebody else, which means they've got something that they want. They got something that they think, well, how come they get it and I don't get it? Why do they think they're deserving of that? Why is it me? Maybe you're sitting in church and you're sitting there going, boy, they get all the praise. Why am I not getting praise? Don't they know what I do? The envy's there. And so it's not just left as an emotion or a thought in themselves. The word envyings here gives the idea that they are now going to act upon it. They are going to apply some heat. Heat to what? To whatever it is that they're envious about. They're going to apply some heat to do what? To change something else. When heat is applied to the water, it changes. So when you're dealing with envyings here, you're not just talking about somebody who just, boy, they feel bad about themselves and they feel angry at everybody else because somebody else is getting all the credit. It never stops there. It moves on to the fact that they are going to do something about it. So he says, there's among you envyings. Then there's among you there's strife. Again, this word is the word that eris, which we actually get when they begin to translate it through the different languages, get our error. Get the idea of, boy, this is a real mistake. When you get into a strife like this, it's a huge mistake, and it's a quarrel, by implication, wrangling. And if you look up just the definition, the English definition of the word wrangling, it is to manipulate in a false sense with false information to carry out an evil deed. When you're talking about strife, these people were going to, under a false pretense or a lie, they're going to use a lie to manipulate, to change, to do something to affect somebody else for a negative outcome. If you're envious of somebody and you're going to apply the heat there, what you're going to end up doing, according to this, and you start that strife, there is a conflict between you and someone else. That person is going to lie about the other one. They're going to do whatever case to cause damage to the other one. For what purpose? To bring back to me what I want. You say, wait a minute. What's going on here? This is what's going on in this church that thought themselves spiritual because they proclaimed loudly, I am a follower of Paul. I am a follower of Apollos. I am a follower of Cephas or Peter. I am a follower of Christ. These people touted themselves outwardly, verbally, as being spiritual giants. But the reality is they were envious of somebody else, and therefore they were going to do something to cause a strife or a conflict, whether it meant that they were going to lie and do everything they could to cause harm to somebody else so that they can look good. And then it uses the word divisions. This word divisions here is a word that comes from a disunion, meaning at one point it was a union and it is now a disunion. It is coming apart at the seams. It is no longer going to be able to function together as one. The word here, in its root word here, the root of this Greek word is stasis, which we get an idea of something as stasis. It's standing, it's firm. This word, when you look at the implication of the opposite of that, a disunion or breaking apart of this, it is a word which they understood when used in the context of the New Testament times was, by implication, a popular uprising. Here's what it's referring to. There's a division here. And in this division, this group, this person, this thought process that may be more than one people that is involved in this thing, they are going to have, if you will, a popular uprising. What's the idea of a popular uprising? We don't like the leader, he's gone. What was happening in this church is they were having a popular uprising. They had enough people in there that they were going to take control of what's going on. And they found that what they had to do is they had to create an idea in the other's mind saying, look, you're following the wrong thing. You need to follow after us. Why? They would use ideas like, yeah, but look, we're following Paul. We're following Peter. We're following Apollos. We're following Christ. They are able then to manipulate people into thinking, oh, this is the direction, these are the people we need to listen to because they are followers of X. What is happening in our churches is we have a popular uprising of people who are sitting there going, hey, everybody else in the church, you need to follow us because we're following so-and-so. As we've already seen, it's not true. They weren't following Paul. They weren't following Apollos. They were not following Peter. They surely were not following Christ, because had they been following them, they would have been truthful in the Word, and they would have been identifying themselves as, boy, we got some spiritual issues here, we need to grow. Just because someone stands up and says that they are following Christ, and they are spiritual giants, and everybody needs to follow them, if they are not a God-given authority, and we talked about this in the previous series we've talked about in building and starting a church and building a church. We're now encouraging the church, and the fact that we're going to encourage the church is you need to follow God and God's leadership. You cannot follow the popular uprising. It doesn't matter if the majority of the people in the church decide, hey, we're going to go this direction. That's not who you follow. He says, you've got a problem here. You are carnal. You are babes. Because what is happening here is you are allowing people to manipulate you. You are now moving in a direction in which your envyings and strifes and now divisions that are among you. Because verse 4 says, for while one saith, I am Paul, and another, I am Apollos, are you not carnal? He said, this is crazy to be sitting there and saying, boy, I'm spiritual because I'm following this person. Who then is Paul and who is Apollos? But ministers, by whom ye believed, even as the Lord gave to every man. He said, look, who are these people? Other than the fact that they're just ministers of which you believed, it's not that you believed in these ministers of these men. These were the men who brought you the truth. They're the one that brought you the truth of salvation. That's all they were. They were ministers. Well, the word minister here is the Greek word diakonos, which is a similar form that we use that is found for deacons. This is just a little bit different form in there. And this one is one who is the one who runs errands, who is an attendant or a waiter. This is someone who is there as a servant. And I love the use of the word when it says one of the definitions here is a waiter. What's a good waiter? Well, a good waiter is going to, he's going to come and he's going to make sure you're comfortable. He's going to make sure you've got what you need. And he's going to ask, what do you need? What do you want? And looking at the menu, you're going to say, hey, I like this, this, and this. And they're going to then go make sure that that is brought to you in a timely manner. And then what do? Well, the true definition of waiters, they're waiting off in the wings to see whether or not there's something else you need. There's something else that needs to go on. Now, in today's society, waiters, they've got 27 different tables, and they're running from different one to different one. They're not just specifically waiting on you. But a minister is really someone who's looking and say, hey, I need to look and pay attention. What is the needs of the people? And I'm there to help. To do what? Just get you what you need. It's really nothing more than that's what a job of a minister is supposed to do, is just simply say, hey, these people have needs. I'm going to be here waiting to see, okay, they need this and they're going to give it to you. So to put them up on some different level or something to where you say, I'm just following them, you don't understand what their job is. Their job is to wait on you. Why? Because you need the help. Because you can't do it for yourself. And again, this is one of those things where it gets a little tricky when you start saying, well, we need to hold pastors and evangelists and these men of God in a higher place. We don't need to necessarily hold them in that place. They've been given that place by God. We need to respect the authority that God has given them over the church. And that's where we need to focus on that authority. So we are obedient to the authority, but at the same time, Their job is not to be dictatorial or authoritative over us to tell us how to run our lives outside of what the Scripture says. They're realizing, hey, my job is to minister. And so they got this idea that they're going to follow these people. And Paul just said, look, I'm just ministers. Verse 6, I have planted, Apollos water, but God gave the increase. So then neither is he that planteth anything, neither he that watereth, but God that giveth the increase. Now he that planteth and he that watereth are one. What was happening here, excuse me, is the divisions were among whom they were going to follow. But they weren't really following these men, because had they been following them, as we've talked about, they would have been hearing. These men are ministering to us. They are bringing to us the truth. We're not listening. What we've done now is we've switched the role, and we've rethought what a waiter should be. And that is, bring me what I want. Bring me this stuff. You work for me. But the reality of it is, it's not. They are doing something for us, and we should be relying on the fact that, hey, they've decided that their job, what they wanted to do, is to really help me. But we've reversed that. We've now got to the idea that, boy, let me tell you what to do. This is what I want. This is when I want it. This is how I want it. Oh, you didn't get it to me on time? Now I'm not going to be happy with your service. You're waiting on me. But a good waiter is one who's going to pay attention to the needs of the constituents, the customers, the church members, and say, you know what? I'm going to see what you need, and I'm going to give you the best service. I'm going to give you the best of my ability to be able to help you do what is right. And if you'll just follow me and trust me on this, I'm not going to lead you astray. You know, you go to a very fine restaurant, and I've had the opportunity to do so on a few occasions. The waiters don't just come in and say, hey, what would you like, and look at the menu. They're coming in, hey, look, let me tell you, this right here, this is some good stuff. Let me give you some recommendation. Let me tell you, look, coming from the chef, boy, you're going to want this today. It's fresh, it's great. They are looking out for me. They're looking to me, what, need, oh, let me tell you, have you ever tried this? Oh, let me tell you, you need to try this. This is just fantastic. They are doing, and my job at that point is, I could sit there and say, no, I don't want that. I don't see any here. Is there some chicken nuggets on here? Can you get me some, a greasy hamburger or something? No, you're at a fancy restaurant. They're going to sit there and give you what's the best that they have. My job at that point is, I'm going to trust you. As a waiter, I'm going to trust you. You know what? Let me try that. I'm going to follow your recommendation. You know something I don't know, and that is, the chef. And the chef has communicated to you and said, hey, here, boy, this is some stuff. Boy, when you get out there, let everybody know, boy, this is really fresh. This is really good. Boy, we got some good stuff in today. This is the stuff you want. So now we've changed the idea of what a waiter's all about. A waiter's really a go-between between the chef, who knows everything that's going on there that you're about to consume, and someone who's going to give you instructions and help you for what's best. That waiter now has changed its roles. It is no longer working for you. It is working for the chef in behalf of what's best for you. That's what a minister should be. He's one who is, God is saying, look, let me tell you, there's some stuff here. Boy, this, you need to feed your sheep, and here's what you need to feed them with. Boy, this is some good stuff. But what happens is we look at that waiter, we look at that minister, we look at that pastor, and we sit there and say, I don't think that's what I need. I don't think it's better. Boy, I really like that greasy hamburger. I really like that chicken nuggets that we're not even sure what's in it. It's really chicken. Well, that's what I really want. So just give me what I want, and quit trying to tell me what's best for me. Isn't that amazing how that happens in our churches? Paul says there's problems you have is because we can't even give you the meat. Why? Because you're just sitting there going, no, we already know what's best for us. You just give us what we want. And Paul says, who are we? You're sitting there trying to tout us as somebody, but yet you're not even listening to us. You're saying, hey, I'm follower Paul and Apollos, but you're not. Because if you'd been following us, you'd been realizing we've been trying to tell you from day one, look, we got some good stuff for you on the menu here. I recommend that you do this. I recommend that you follow this. Why? Because I've got some information from the head chef here. Say, boy, this is some good stuff. This is what you need today. But we're not doing that. So he's sitting there going, look, we're just simply servants. We're servants of God. We're serving you. It's not the other way around. Understand, they're not servants. Pastors are not servants of the church. Evangelists are not servants of the church. They're servants of God serving the church. This is where the church was messing up here. Because they were saying, hey, I'm following this person, not because they were actually following. What they were saying is, this person is who we're going to sit there and give us what we want. But that's not what's happened. They were using it as a boastful thing instead of a reality. It was a manipulative lie. So when he talks about it here, he just begins to introduce the idea of what their job is as ministers and as waiters. And if we begin to start listening to what is being presented to us, what's best for us, we're then able to then move from the milk to the meat. Big difference, as if we'll just listen to the recommendations of the waiter.
Though all around is sinking